Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Need to be, presenters need to be me and Mary Lynn and Jeff and Amalia.
Can everyone hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can hear you.
Hi, Amalia.
Hello.
Who's the technology department with the screen? Is that you, Mary Lynn?
Could be, but I'll put the agenda up right now.
Yeah, that must be reviewing somebody.
Can you guys see the agenda on your screen?
Barney or Cal? Does anybody see Barney or Cal?
I see Brian's head too. Now, do you see the agenda?
Yeah.
On your screen? Okay.
Good morning.
I turned my video off, I'm not sure.
Well, just remember, we're still reviewing.
Oh,
now,
someone
yeah.
changed it to me. Either Brian or Dan did. Ah.
It's going to pick up. When we turn the video on, it's going to show this phone the whole time, not our video. Is that how you did it last time?
What do you mean?
Don't you see my agenda?
Like when you talk, it's going to show the phone because that's what it's picking up as talking. Right?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, so on YouTube, all it's going to show the live.
Oh, Cal's here. Hi,
Okay,
Cal.
I'm here.
That's how you did it last. I guess we're showing
Should be okay.
Correct.
I think we're waiting. Is Barney here? I don't see him.
Yes, I am.
Oh, hi, Barney. Good morning.
Good morning.
Fantastic.
So we can see your screen.
You can see what?
Is that you in the power? Open the PowerPoint now.
Can you close the door?
Ooh.
again,
That's
please?
what I'm saying.
Okay, okay.
You should share the document, not your screen.
Okay. Okay.
So you might want to. That makes sense.
See anything up on the screen there?
You're not seeing? Oh,
Oh, there it is.
are you putting it up on the screen up there?
Probably, yeah.
Come on. Yeah. And then it. Okay. So I'll tell Carol to schedule time with the four of us, Nick.
Who's that?
Chris.
He doesn't really get on yet.
Just let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay, I think, just 1 second, and let me get this up on the screen. Oh, you can see it up there, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I can see what everyone.
Um,
I need it up there.
all right, I believe we are ready to go. Take it away.
Call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee for the Park District of Highland Park on Thursday, July 2nd at 10:01 a.m. Roxanne, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Grossberg,
I believe he's going to be
Vice Pres-
joining us late.
okay. Vice President Kaplan, and then President Ruttenberg.
I'm here.
All right, we have a quorum, so we're going to move forward. The first item on the agenda is for the executive director, Rome's, discuss public comment.
Yeah, we did not receive any public comment.
Okay,
For this
great.
meeting.
Cal, excuse
yes.
me, I think you have to read the announcement.
He doesn't have to.
No? Then how come I
No.
get to?
You don't have to going forward. As long as it's posted on the agenda, we got clarification. We don't have to read it.
Oh, good. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so don't worry, I was going to ask the same question because it wasn't in my cheat sheet. Okay, so so with no public comment, the next item on the agenda is for the Finance Committee to approve the minutes from the May 28th and the June 4th meeting. I reviewed them. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I'll second it as the chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Take that as a roll call where both of President Ruttenberg and Commissioner Bernstein voted aye, and the motion carried and the minutes approved. The next item on the agenda is cash categories, and I think that's for Mary Lynn.
Yeah, actually, and can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Before I turn it over to Mary Lynn and then eventually to Jeff for capital projects, I just wanted to provide some perspective as to why we've chosen to present the information regarding Park District funding in our capital plan in the chosen format that you already received in your packet and that we are going to present this morning. So as you know, we did approve, obviously, our operating and capital budget in December 2019 for fiscal year 2020. And then in February, we issued bonds that provided approximately $7.3 million to be used towards capital projects with a requirement that it be used in a 2 to 2.5 year period. Shortly after this, we all know, on March 13th, we closed all of our facilities and we canceled all of our programs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this obviously put significant financial burden on Park District finances. So therefore, on March 27th, we appropriately held a Finance Committee meeting in which we reviewed our operational losses, our cash flow projections, and our approved capital plan. Our effort was obviously to reduce expenditures, ensuring the Park District had adequate cash flow and cash on hand and did not fall below our fund balance policy. So at that time, staff and the board liaisons assessed at that meeting our 2020 capital projects, and we identified projects that were essential to continue in 2020, and then which ones we wanted to defer to the fall or to 2021 for later consideration. At that time, we eliminated approximately $2.5 million from the capital budget. Then, at the suggestion of the Finance Committee, we prepared and presented at the June 4th Finance Committee meeting year-end operating projections for Recreation and General Fund for 2020. Again, significant budget cuts. We are projecting a worst-case scenario of a loss of approximately $1.5 million. So today, as we sit midway through the fiscal year, our focus again is today on the 2020 capital plan with the emphasis on two objectives this morning. So this morning, what we want to do is make sure we have an understanding of how much funding is available to spend on capital projects and what we are required to spend due to our bond issuance in the fiscal year 2020 and 2021. Secondly, we want to discuss the new system for categorizing capital plans, capital projects, to help determine which projects should be prioritized in 2020 and 2021. So the result of this meeting, when the meeting's over, our hope is to get consensus from the Finance Committee, the proposed priority tiers, and a revised capital plan for 2020. So then we can bring it to the Park Board, and ultimately this will give us direction on how to continue through 2020. So even though we'll mention a little bit about 2021, our focus today is really on what we should continue doing in 2020.
Brian?
So,
Can I interrupt-
yeah.
Brian, can I interrupt you for a second, please? I
Yeah,
just want, just so we understand the process here, is this meeting being televised in any way?
yeah,
Okay, how's it being televised?
it's being streamed live on the internet.
Live on the internet and like a, on a.
On
what-
YouTube.
YouTube? Okay,
Yeah.
so just so everyone's clear that this meeting is being streamed, that the public is watching, which is great, and that this meeting was properly noticed, and so it's in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
that's all I wanted to just make to clarify. All right, sorry about that. Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So therefore, I will turn it over to Mary Lynn, who first is just going to talk about the funding that we have available and trying to talk about the categories that our cash is in. So this is the first thing. So she'll go through this pretty quickly. Go ahead, Mary Lynn.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So just focusing for a moment on what Brian was just discussing as far as how our cash looks in the various cash categories we have. At the beginning, at 2020, our beginning balances were almost $25 million. And it's broken out in this pie chart here by the 4 different cash categories that we are going to be looking at a little bit more closely on the next slide. But it's roughly basically a 1/3 division between operating cash, capital cash, and then bonds with the special rec fund is depicted in this pie chart. Okay, as we just discussed, we have roughly $25 million at the beginning of the year, and then these numbers are through June 9th. So at June 9th, our current balance of these various cash categories is roughly $23 million. The first cash category I want to discuss with you is our operating cash. At the beginning of the year, it was at roughly $9.6 million, and it has decreased to roughly $8.6 million as of June 9th. And if you recall, operating cash is money that is the recreation fund and the general fund, and it is made up of facilities and programs, and then parks and administration as far as expenses that come out of operating cash. And it's funded by user fees in our programs, and then of course by property taxes. So those are the ins and outs. And it is the balances we've been looking at as we look at cash flows each month in the finance committee to see, where we're projecting our cash to be at the end of each month. This is what we've been focusing on, our operating cash. And keep in mind that the board policy for operating cash, these 2 funds, is a minimum 25% fund balance. And operating cash is what funds, or is one a way to fund our capital projects. And we are giving operating cash, this cash category, a red light. This is a fund that we really are trying to stop spending this money. We have made significant operations cuts. We have made staffing freezes. We've put staff on furlough. And so this money we are really trying to conserve, again, denoted in red. Our next cash category we want to talk about is our capital cash.
Mary Lynn, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Are you going to show us where, even pre-COVID, what your projections for where we should be in all of these, I'm going to call these buckets, where we should be and where we are currently?
Not today.
So that's the cash flow that we've been showing you, and we'll show that again at the next finance committee meeting, and we'll show that every month. Today, for the purposes, we're just trying to explain the different cash categories so that we can understand capital. So
I understand that, but to help us make decisions or to analyze these things, it'd be helpful if we knew, I get it, where we started at the beginning. I assume that's the beginning of the year, correct? The 9.6 million?
That's right, January 1st.
Okay, so
what we would like to know, and so it's clear to us, I'm not going to speak for Barney, I have to speak for myself, is I like to know, okay, so we're at 8.5 or $8.6 million currently, but where were we supposed to be, and how's that departure, and have that all in one place so we're not fishing around looking for that information.
You know, if we go back to the line graph that was shown at the board meeting and at the prior finance committee, that I think is what Cal's addressing.
Because right now, this doesn't mean anything to me. Because this doesn't, all this shows is how much cash we have on hand, but it doesn't show where we were supposed to do and what's the diversion. I like to have all that information together. It's easier for me to understand.
So I understand your question, and I'm going to try and address it to say that we're not really talking about operating cash today, and it doesn't really have an effect on the conversation regarding 2020 capital, which is our focus today, which is why we didn't provide that information. We certainly will be providing that at the next Finance Committee meeting, and we can get that information to you after this meeting.
Okay. I would suggest moving forward, every time we talk about whether it's operating cash, capital cash, or anything like that, I mean, the beginning balance really is not really relevant. It's really what's relevant right now is where we were supposed to be and where we are currently, based on what we projected before COVID and where we are right now. The beginning balance doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, I think when you see where we're going, we're not really focusing on operating cash today. And
I know you
so,
just brought it up. You just spent, a couple minutes talking about it. So that's the reason I talked about it.
Understood, and I read like we're done. We're not talking about operating cash anymore today. That was it. That was just a friendly reminder of what's sitting there. We're going to
Just
really
so you know the difference.
right.
I
I'm just trying
understand,
to
but
point out.
again, what I'm pointing out is that means nothing to me. It's just showing
Okay.
because I don't know what that means.
Well, look,
Okay.
let me jump in and make this, agree with Cal, agree with Marilyn. That the line graph that you showed us before at the board meeting
Yes.
was the perfect representation of an answer to Cal's question.
Understood. And the only reason we didn't put that in, we will have that at the next Finance Committee meeting, is because today we're trying to focus on capital and the money that we want to use to spend on capital, which is not operating cash.
No, totally understand.
Okay.
Cal's point, which is an extremely good one, is that at every single meeting we have, whether it's Finance Committee, board meeting, workshop meeting, just sitting around having a cup of coffee, I think we should have that line graph presented as a flash. Here we are, people. This is where we are
Okay.
today. I mean, that will, it's easy to understand. We don't have any questions the interstices numbers don't matter whether it's fees or taxes. It gives you the point in time, the differential between where we are and where we should be. And I think that's what Cal is asking for.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay. And I understand. We'll have it from now on. Got it.
And I will point out that the color coding coincides with the pie chart on the page before.
It sure does. And we're going to be focusing on yellow and green today, not that red bucket, as Cal called it, or as we call it, a cash category.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay, so we're going to continue looking at our yellow cash, our capital cash. At the beginning of the year, we had $7.3 million. And at June 9th, we have almost $7 million. And if you'll recall, the capital fund is used for annual spending and 5-year repair and replacement items and green print projects. It is funded mostly by our operating cash surplus. And also, as we work on special recreation projects, we do assign cash from that category as well over to the capital cash. We can borrow from our capital cash to fund operations, which would be in the red box. And capital cash has no minimum fund balance. And so given all of that, we are classifying capital cash as a yellow light, a cautionary amount of cash that maybe we want to spend, maybe we don't, because this is a category of cash that if necessary, if things got really bad, we could use it to fund operations.
Okay, but again, to beat a dead horse on this, so since we can borrow from this fund to fund operating cash, right now, looking at this chart you're giving us, we don't know whether operating cash is being impacted by the COVID. I can't tell from what the information you have here.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is that we have $7 million right now. And we know through our previous conversation that we have no risk of going below our 25% fund balance per our last meeting, and which we will show in the future. So we have no.
For which fund, Brian? For which fund?
The operating fund, the one that you're referring to. So there is
The red box.
The red box.
the red box. We have no reason in our worst case scenario to anticipate we will ever go below the 25% fund balance, and therefore we have no reason to anticipate, even in our worst case scenario, that we will need to borrow from the capital cash, which means our capital cash is in good shape. It's yellow because we want to make sure it stays there to some degree, but we have no reason to believe that we will need that money to ever go to operations.
Is there any thought, or has there been any thought, whether it's necessary or not, I'm just throwing this out there, that even though we have a minimum 25% fund balance policy in the operating cash based on what's happening in the world, is that sufficient, or should be adjusted?
So it is sufficient, but I think we are operating under the, it is good that we had more than 25%. We actually had, I think, closer to the year end, maybe at 30 some percent. So that gave us a little buffer, but that buffer is there for situations like this. So many park districts are underneath their 25% fund balance because that's what this is intended for. But we have been able to manage our expenses in a way that keeps us above our fund balance. So I think we are in a good position, and we talked about this with our auditors as well, and they believe we are in a very healthy position because, as we mentioned last week, as we talked about the CAFR, we also don't want to overfund it and have too high of a fund balance because then it appears that we're holding on to too much cash.
And that addressed a question that Terry asked, but what is the number that you would plug into red box under 25% fund balance? So what I'm getting to is if we have $8.5 million, is it 25? What number makes up the 25% so that we should deduct it from the 8.5 million?
It's about $4.5 million.
Okay, so we really have usable without worrying about it in the operating cash account, $4 million without tapping into our reserves, plus $7 million in capital cash that can be used to fund operations.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes.
So in conclusion, you're not recommending that we adjust the 25% minimum fund balance policy?
No, I think it serves us well. But as Brian said, I think we were fortunate that we had more than that, just, just in case. Again, it's a minimum fund balance.
Right.
So, getting close to that probably gives me an uncomfortable feeling, but we're well above that at this point.
So you're not uncomfortable. You're actually comfortable
He's comfortable, yeah.
with balance in our operating cash. Okay.
But wait, there's really a couple things that if this was a household account, we could say we have 7 and 8, we have $15 million to pay the bills of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we call it capital account, just because we call it operating cash, it's kind of not meaningful if you look at it from the overall picture. I have always said, how much money do we have, without worrying about the categories, because we can move things around.
Right, some things we can move around, but some we cannot, which is what we're gonna get to when we get to these green boxes. So,
Exactly.
even though we have roughly $23 million right now, some of it, you know, because we are a governmental entity, we can only spend it in certain ways.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to get here today before we hand the floor over to Jeff, so that you understand exactly what Jeff has to spend on capital projects.
But I think we do. I seriously, I think we do. And I think what the key is that we have, and I know we'll go through it, we have $7 million in the bond cash that apparently has to be spent by the end of next year.
Yes.
That's the magic that we have to get to.
Okay, but before we get to that, so I'm reading your last line. So we do not have a minimum fund balance requirement on our capital account, correct?
That's correct.
So,
That's correct.
okay. To do,
We only,
Go ahead, Kev.
I mean, so basically, to be compliant with our minimum fund balance policies, all we need to do is to have the 25% balance in our operating fund, whatever that is.
so we have a policy for 25% in the rec and general fund, and then we have a policy of 15% for the special rec fund, which is going to be our fourth box, our second green box, or our fourth box on the slide.
And we have no policy with regard to capital accounts.
No, we do not.
Should we have a policy?
You know, well, because you can borrow against it, you know, I would say you don't have to have one. And the other issue with the capital fund is that it's funded by operations. So it's kind of a result of, well, do we have enough money, you know, left over in operating cash at the end of the year to make a transfer or not? I mean, that's, you know, kind of when you make that judgment call. So you might not want to have your hands tied by having a minimum fund balance, because you might really want to leave money in operations and not transfer to capital just to fulfill a minimum fund balance.
And I'm sure you both recall, we have discussed this in the past, whether or not we should or should not have a minimum fund balance. We certainly never like to be below, like, say, $2 million. It's not a percent, and it's really just something that we monitor when we look at our 5-year funding model, which again, we don't have today, but we do look at that regularly. And as we project out 5 years, we never want to really go too far below that $2 million point. But it's not a policy, because we certainly can do it. You know, it just depends upon the environment. But so it's definitely something we can continue to discuss. And our auditors have well said that we don't need to have one. And the general practice, I think most don't, because people want to spend their capital cash. It's there because of capital repair and replacement. But, you know, that's about a summary of the answer to that question. So if you have thoughts.
So basically, we have like an informal policy that we're going to have a minimum balance of $2 million in our capital account, and that is to basically, in case one year we spend it down, we still have money, money available in case of emergencies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's move on.
All right. So moving on, talking about our bond cash now. So there was our bond issuance. At the end of February, we brought in almost $7.4 million due to the premiums. And right now we are currently sitting at roughly $6.8 million of bond cash at June 9th. Again, the bond cash money is also used for the capital fund for annual and 5-year repair and replacement items and greenfield projects. But this money is to be spent in 2 years. And this money is funded solely by the bond issuance, and it cannot be borrowed against. It has a very specific use, which is to be spent on capital. And as Barney said earlier, it needs to be spent by December of 2021. And so we give this cash category a green light, meaning we should have a definitive plan of how we want to spend this money over the rest of 2020 and then into 2021. And the fourth cash category that we want to talk about today is our special recreation cash. Now, the special recreation cash fund, our cash category is a little bit different, but we anticipate for both 2021, or both 2020 and 2021, that we will have $450,000 each year to spend on special recreation projects. And if you recall, this fund is used to support NSSRA and then also to be spent on our district ADA projects. It is funded by a separate levy at the end of each year when we do our regular tax levy. And this is another cash category that we cannot borrow against to fund operations. It needs to be spent on ADA projects only. And it should be really spent each and every year. And we do have a board policy for this fund of 15%. And that's why we are going to green light this cash category as well, saying that we should really spend $450,000 out of this fund this year in ADA projects and then again next year. So does anyone have any questions on this slide before we go to the next one?
My question is not about this particular slide, but.
Oh, Terry.
Hi, I'm here.
Wait, hold on, Terry. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Grossberg has joined the meeting. What time did you join the meeting, Terry?
I came at 10:05.
10:05.
Oh.
Okay, thanks, Roxanne.
Okay, sorry about that. The user fees are only in the operating cash, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that's what, I want to make sure that wasn't in any of the other funds. It was just the.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go next slide.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Oh, yeah, I think.
Now we're,
me.
yes,
Okay,
this is Jeff.
Jeff, real quick. So we're moving into, Cal, the next agenda item, but they kind of blend. So.
I call this agenda item number 6, capital projects. Jeff Smith to present.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. So as Brian mentioned, staff have developed a prioritization plan for the capital plan to essentially help us to determine which projects we need to move forward with and which may need to go years out. So this has been really good timing for this. We've looked back at the current plan and we've applied these standards to it. So I'm going to walk through them real quick, and then we'll talk about the particular projects. So it's a 5-tier system, with tier 1 being the highest priority. Tier 1 is safety and legal compliance. So these are requirements due to, let's say, a grant, an intergovernmental agreement, a law, or simply a safety concern. Next is tier 2. This we're calling critical repair and replace of existing items. So it's an existing asset that, if not addressed in that particular year, it could pose a safety hazard, it could impact operations, or it could lead to a larger expense. Our next tier, tier 3, is scheduled replacement. So these are, once again, existing assets that have reached their useful life. A good portion of the capital plan is this repair replacement schedule. Now, tier 4 are improve existing items. So these, just like tier 3, are existing items, but they aren't necessarily items that are up or need to be replaced due to their reaching their useful life, but instead they're things that would have a positive impact on the district, on facilities, on operations, if we were to make a change to them. However, not moving forward with that would not have a negative impact, and we would still have the status quo. And then lastly is tier 5, and these are new items, whether it be in some type of equipment or adding capacity somewhere, and same thing, not doing them would not change the status quo. Any questions about the 5 tiers before we move on?
Questions, Bernie?
You're muted.
Thank you. Now, it lies in the details to whether something is a 3 or a 4.
we'll get to that, but,
Exactly.
okay, Terry, any questions, how to classify these?
No, this is actually very, very helpful, this 5 tiers.
Yeah, I like it a lot too, so, okay, let's move forward.
Great. So I want to break down what we're going to see next. We wanted to take, before we got into the detail of the capital projects, take a little bit more broad approach, see things from the big picture. And hopefully, I put this together in a manner that is helpful for the board to understand. That was our goal. So we broke things out without going through the line item details, just by looking at the tiers and looking at the funding available, how this all plays out over the next 2 years. So you can see at the top, capital projects budget, we have the $14 million we talked about. And then if you look to the right, the capital cash available is approximately $15 million. That $15 million is made up of the bond cash, the special rec cash, and the capital cash, which we're spending cautiously. So from left to right, if you start with tier 1, we approved the budget to spend in tier 1 projects. Hold on, having technical difficulties.
Yes, we
Hold on,
are.
it's okay. Sometimes you gotta hit this. And you gotta go like that. Okay, we got it together now. So we approved $2.7 million, as you can see there. When we met on March 27th to revise this, that number was then reduced to 1.1 million. And then as of today, that number is going up a little bit, and that's for a couple reasons. One of the reasons we'll go through, but one of them is we shifted some Rosewood money over just in case. We'll talk about it if we decide to do the revetments in the fall. And also there are some ADA projects that we have decided should move forward so that we can spend that special recreation cash, which is important to spend, and we can talk about that as well. Looking at 2021, there's about 1.9 that's in the budget. Again, we're not focusing on 2021 today. We will do that in the future. But if you add these two together, it's about $4 million of tier 1 projects. So you're looking to the right of how we'll fund that. 3.6 would come out of that bond cash. About 400,000 will come out of special rec, and we will not spend any money out of capital cash. Any questions so far? I'm going to go quicker through the rest.
All right, let me just look at this for a second.
Sure.
Okay, Barney, any questions?
No, I'm gonna wait till we get all the numbers, see how it.
Terry?
I'm good. I'm
Okay,
good.
thanks.
Okay. So tier 2, same approach, and I just put the whole thing up there. But if you look at the 2020 to 2021, at the very last column there, 4.9 million is how much tier 2 projects, again, these are critical projects over the next 2 years. And the way that we would spend that money is 3.7 out of bond cash, 112 out of ADA. Again, it has to qualify for ADA. And we would be dipping into our capital cash a little bit.
Brian, excuse me. Where is the proposed 2021 budget? Because you're showing, wait, let me finish. You're showing for 2020 and 2021, $5 million in tier 2. But where before did we know how much was in 2021?
We haven't changed 2021. That's what was in the 5-year capital plan, basically. So that's it says working draft because we haven't made a 2021 budget yet. But that was the number that was in the capital 5-year plan.
Okay, so then the number of $1.8 million plus 3.1 is how you get to the 4.9.
Correct.
And what would the numbers have been for total for 20 and 21 before the virus hit? I'm trying to find out what I'm saying is what's the difference between this and where we would have been for 20 and 21 absent the absent the reductions?
I mean, it's only about a $75,000 difference.
Yeah, so what we're gonna get to in a moment is that anything that's classified as a tier 1 or tier 2, we're recommending moving forward with. So there really aren't many projects that we wouldn't, that we're recommending not doing in these two categories due to the critical nature of them.
All right, so you'll show us where the savings come in then from our reductions at some point here, but this isn't these aren't the categories.
Yeah, these aren't showing the specific projects. These are just giving you a broad picture of how much money we're spending on each tier and how it's being funded. Because I know the big question was, where are we going to spend that bond cash, and how are we funding these projects? So the story here is really tier 1 and tier 2 projects are the ones that we need to focus on, and that's where we should spend our bond cash and our special rev cash. And if necessary, that's where we should cautiously spend our capital cash. So the total there, you can see between the two, it adds up to about $9 million over a 2-year period. And the remaining, we will have spent after, as the goal is, within those 2 years, we will have spent all of our bond cash, and we will still have some money to use from the special rec fund for other ADA projects that may fall in tier 3, 4, or 5. And we still have $6 million at the end of 2021 to spend on projects. Now, I didn't mention this, but I want to preface, there is an asterisk at the top of that $15 million. And at the bottom of the page, it shows we are making the assumption in this grid, a worst case scenario, that we will not transfer any money from our operational cash. We normally transfer about $2.5 million per year. To put it in perspective, we're budgeting, right now we're projecting, we'll probably transfer maybe $1 million, but we're saying this is like worst case scenario. We're not going to transfer anything this year or anything next year. So this is trying to paint the picture that we're in really good shape for tier 1 and tier 2. Worst case scenario, we still have spent the bond cash, and we still have capital cash, and we still have some ADA cash.
So just to be clear, the capital cash does have to have X amount of millions in it for the 25%, and the special rec cash has to have 15% in it.
So that was the question I think that Kayla was referring to earlier. We don't have a policy for a reserve for capital cash. So technically, we spend that down to zero. But we try and keep, a couple million in there just in case. We don't want to be in that situation where we have zero in capital cash. That would not be good.
Right,
but there's no
the operating cash is where you have to have the 20.
Right, exactly. And again, I know we don't have that line bar graph today, but if you recall, we are projecting it to be $1.5 million less than what we budgeted, which means we will have $1.5 million less to transfer to capital, which again, we're projecting in this model, we're not going to transfer any money just to give this safe outlook to show how we need to spend the bond cash and how we need to fund tier 1 and tier 2 projects, which is really what we should be focusing on right now during the pandemic, is what needs to be done.
So we could spend every cent of the 6.1 from capital cash, knowing that we would have probably $1 million would be going into it.
Yeah, but we're not going to recommend that. But because
I'm just saying, I'm trying to get the big picture in my brain. Got it.
You could.
Ernie, any other questions?
No, I want to get to the bottom line so we can then see how the money's being spent.
Okay. All right. Next.
I'll move a little quicker. So here's tier 3, about $1 million for the 2 years. That would be spent out of mostly capital cash, if we decided to do that. Again, totals there. And
Wait,
then
hold
the
on.
remaining.
Remind us what tier 3 are?
So tier 3 is scheduled replacement.
Okay,
So
fine.
these,
Okay,
yeah,
that's all I need to hear. Okay, it's fine.
okay.
Okay.
So we still have $5 million left in capital cash and still about 4 million in special rec. Then you go to tier 4.
Wait, back up a second. Just understand, tier 3 is scheduled, is that part of our 5-year capital plan?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So these are things that we want to replace because they've met their useful life, but they're not critical yet. So like you could.
I understand, Brian, I understand. Well, just let me be clear and concise here. So tier 1,
Okay.
tier 2, those are things that need to get done because either there's something dangerous enhances a safety or it just has to happen. Tier 3 is part of our scheduled improvements that are included in our capital, our 5-year capital plan.
Yes.
Okay, then what's tier 4?
Okay, so tier 4 is an improvement of an existing facility or capital item. So
Is that beyond our 5-year capital plan?
It's all in our 5-year capital plan currently, but it's categorized as, like, for example, the fitness equipment, the spin bikes. We kind of set, that'd be tier 3 actually. The locker room updates. Part of that is tier 3, but a lot of that, like a sauna, that'd be a tier 4. That's an improvement to an existing facility. If we were to add saunas.
No, according to Kaplan, that's tier 1.
Okay, let's
Yeah. This is open to board opinion, but this is staff's recommendation.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. So anyway, there's a lot of tier 4, and it's about over the 2-year period. Most of it we already have deferred. Well, there's a lot in 2021, and so a lot of that's going to come out of either special rec or capital cash. And as you can see, I'm going to go to tier 5. There's not a lot in tier 5 right now in the next 2 years, but if you add those two together and you get the total, you're going to see that we only have $1 million left in capital cash if we were to spend all the money on those tier 4s. So we have to be very cautious about tier 4s until we know if we will be able to do transfers from the rec fund. And we have to be a little cautious about tier 3s, but tier 3s are important because they're scheduled replacement. I'll just total the final bottom line there. As we said, it's 14 million and a half, 14.5 over the next 2 years that will have been budgeted. And the amount that we will have spent will be all of the bond cash, almost all of the special rec cash, and almost close to all the capital cash. So this is just depicts the broad picture.
Okay.
Any questions before Jeff goes into capital more specifically?
Any questions, comments?
I have one comment.
Okay, go ahead.
In the capital plan prioritization page that came before this, you don't have to turn back to it. You had the label tier 1, safety/legal compliance. And then you named them, instead of tier, you're saying what they are generically referring to. I think that, I would like to see it like that, because that avoids us saying, well, wait a minute, what was tier 1? It's a much clearer statement. You got to do this one. This is very important. This is important, blah, blah, blah. So I would use the labels that you came up, that generated the name tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, instead of calling them tiers, because that's confusing.
Yeah, makes total sense. And frankly, the only reason we didn't was because we tried to fit it on one page. So makes total sense, Barney. We will certainly just make that adjustment.
So at this point, I'm going to pause and ask this question. And this is why there's a lot of data here. And again, that's why I like to have little charts, graphs. For 2020, the total budget for capital was 6.7 million. So now we're saying we're at 5.8, so we've got almost $1 million reduction in the budget. That's what I'm seeing here. We were at 5, we cut off $1.7 million. but now we're creeping up by 800,000 on the total budget, the bottom line. So I guess
Well-
you're gonna explain where that 800,000 crept back in.
Yeah, and mostly it's Rosewood, but
Pretty much one project, that's $800,000.
we'll
Okay.
show you.
All right, and we'll get there. And I just want to keep going back to the plan, and I know and I see some items and we're going to talk about them. Westridge remains to me to be the biggest single cloud over our head as to what we're going to spend money on. And I know we're spending a lot of money, but remind me before we go on, what was our plan to fund a replacement of Westridge? Was it this bond cash or different bond cash?
Yeah, so our plan for 2020 is still and was to begin the process of assessing what funding we either have or is available, because we have an opportunity to look at refinancing current debt certificates that are coming up. However, in the current situation, we're not sure if that will be the best decision or not, and we haven't been focused on that. Obviously, we're focused on current operations, but we have money in the 5-year capital plan for repair and replacement, and our goal is to begin the process of assessing whether or not there would be financing, partnerships, and a community need and an internal need to either renovate or have a new building, since there are a significant number of projects that need to be addressed at this building to the tune of.
And I thought that Westridge was previously targeted to have it planned out so we could start construction in 2022.
We were going to do planning, a portion of planning this year.
Right.
And then we were going to potentially see what funding mechanisms would be available next year, and then potentially do construction and as such in 2021, and potentially do 2022. But that is just listed as a green print priority with a timeline that needs to be instituted, but we have not, because we've been living in a different situation.
Yeah, we're going to have to review that whole thing because, quite honestly, I know we've got a lot of money we're going to have to spend for a building that's going to fall down.
And we'll get to we'll get to Westridge, I'm sure, when we go through the details. So
I'm right there, Cal. That was my
right.
snarky comment.
All right, Terry, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Okay, at this point, I assume we're going to the detail next?
Yeah.
Okay, can I take 2 minutes? I'm at the office right now. I got to put out a fire, and I'll be right back. So I'll be.
Yeah, sure, no problem. All right, so 2-minute break.
I'm going to share my.
Why is master planning part of the capital budgets?
Okay, I'm back, guys.
Okay, I just asked a question of why planning is part of capital budgets.
So per our policy procedures, we put any item that would individually be over $10,000 and go towards a project that would be considered a capital project in our, because eventually what happens is that money gets assigned to a project. So for example, if that money were assigned to Rosewood, the Rosewood Boardwalk, for example, which is a very relevant example, that is a capital project. And so those planning dollars would go towards that project. And we assign them, we have software that's way more detailed than you need to know or probably want to know. But it assigns all of our expenses to capital so that everything stays together. So it's in capital for that reason. If that doesn't help you, I'm happy to talk offline more about that, but.
No, it's fine. It's just one of, it's just,
Yeah.
like, we got to spend the money so we know how to spend the money is what it amounts to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Okay.
All right.
Who's got the floor now?
That's me.
Okay, Jeff.
So what you're looking at here are just the tier 1 and tier 2 projects. So the safety, legal compliance, and then the critical repair replacement of existing items. That's what we're looking at first. After we go through this list, we can share the tier 3 to 5, but we're just focusing on these because, as we mentioned earlier, these are really the priority and primarily the recommendation for $2020. So I know you've seen this ahead of time in your packet. So I'm going to touch on a few items. I'm not going to go through everything line by line unless there are particular questions. But I do want to start with the first line, which is the one that Barney asked about, is the master planning. So yes, like Brian said, these are in capital because they go toward a capital project. And so we're recommending keeping the full amount in there. And part of that at this point has been earmarked for the Rosewood Boardwalk assessment and possible future steps that the board's aware of. Now, the other item under district-wide annual that I would like to point out is the last one here, line 5, which is the ADA path improvement. So this goes back to what Mary Lynn was talking about with the ADA dollars availability. And so we've looked at our priorities, and this would be utilizing funds to put some ADA accessible routes in some of our parks. We have prioritized a number of locations, and what we're looking at is taking an existing path that does not provide ADA accessibility to a certain element that we feel should, and making that accessible at this time. So that's what those dollars are.
Jeff, what parks are those? Is that the new, the preserve, or are these elsewhere?
It's elsewhere. We've looked at Cloverdale. We are also considering, I've got my notes right here, Devonshire, and we may consider Laurel as well.
Yeah.
There are a number of other locations. Those would be
I've brought up in the past, I mean, I think that there's real problems at the preserve with the bridges and making those ability for people in wheelchairs and stuff to access handicapped people. Those are something I want you to look at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm going to move along here past technology, parks equipment.
Well, let's just go. I'm just hearing me for a second. Just to this.
Of course.
Okay, I think we're okay with district-wide technology. I think we're fine with parks equipment. I assume that you're just deferring that to 2021,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, once again, the 2021 working budget it's very much that. It's something we're working on right now. We'll be presenting that to the board at a later date,
Yeah.
but it does involve some deferrals, you'll see here.
Okay, so we're basically pushing those things off a year right now. So that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, let's go down. Next one is you throw out community park. Is that the preserve?
Yes, it is. We need to update it now.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, see, I'm on the ball here. I know these things.
All right, that was good catch, Cal.
Okay. All right. So what is path repair? Talk to me about that. That's gonna be 2021. Oh, you're pushing that back here.
Yeah, so you'll see here, if you look at column D, I apologize, I didn't review this chart again. Column C is the approved budget from 2020. Column D was what we discussed, the decisions we essentially made at the March 27th Finance Committee. And now we're at column E, which is today. And you'll see that there are no recommended changes from our previous conversation.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Moraine Park.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jerry.
On line 13? So I know that that is the regular scheduled money that we had set aside for community park. And so is there going to be a presentation to the board about what we should be looking at with regards to community park? What are the developments that will be that we'll be able to recognize in September of 2020 as a result of this money?
Yes, so staff will be coming to the board soon to talk about community park. We are excited that we're getting there.
The preserve.
Oh, I did it again. So I'm reading it here. About the preserve. We're excited that we're getting very close to the ability for us to bid the project out. As not to sidetrack, but as the board's aware, the OSLAD grant, we received the grant agreement, and we're waiting for that executed agreement back from the state. Once we have that, we'll be allowed to move forward.
Okay, Jeff, just so I understand again, everything that's on this list that you're showing us right now is either going to be done this year or next year, correct?
Yeah, column E is this year we're recommending. Column F is next year, but I will once again stress that column F it's really not the focus of today. It is a work in progress, but as of today, that's what we're recommending.
Okay, so should we be focusing on stuff which is E, which is what we're doing this year, or should we also focus on F?
I've certainly entertained questions for F, but the focus is on E, and hopefully to get a consensus from the committee today on moving forward with projects in column E. We'll be coming to the board for approval of column F and later when we present our capital plan in a couple of months.
And the items that are in column F, were those in the previous slide where we showed us spending the money next year? Those were
this is the breakdown of that total dollar amount. Yes.
Okay, those were in there. So basically, you just want us to review. These are the stuff that you're finding that are dangerous and hazardous and has to be done as soon as possible.
Yes.
Yes, and we are looking for consensus so that we can then also present this to the board at the next meeting. And we really just want to make sure that everyone is in agreement with the board that staff is going to move forward with these projects. Just because obviously we want to know how to prioritize and schedule our planning department's time, making sure that we're, working on these projects appropriately within the guidelines of the board.
Are we going to do a budget amendment to reflect this?
We will eventually do a budget amendment, yes.
Okay.
I think, in August.
Okay. So I guess what you really want us to focus on is Rosewood Beach, the revetment.
We're going to get to that.
We'll get to that, yeah.
I would like to touch.
There's a couple important things.
I would like to touch on Moraine Park first. Okay. So you'll see here, there was between column D and E, there was about a $30,000 increase.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that, so column D is money that's been expended. So this is, as everyone probably recalls, the path down to the dog beach that is currently inaccessible due to the washout. And so staff, you'll see in column C, this was something that was budgeted to essentially get repaired this year. Our goal is to reopen it by the end of the year. However, with the pandemic, that's kind of been, it's been put on hold. So there is money that's already been expended in conceptual design and other research. But what we're saying here is in column E, that would be moving forward with the detailed design, the construction documents, for the goal of then in column F, doing that work next year. And so basically what we're saying is if we want to see that path opened at some point next year, we would need to get started with that next step this year. Now, if the board was not ready to make that decision or felt that we could wait until 2022 to officially reopen that area, then we could do that work next year. But this is set up to say that we would be able to open that path probably in early fall of 2021.
So I thought we were partnering with people on that, or is that 100% on the Park District?
So you're correct. There was the Army Corps Ravine 10 project, which you will see, we've categorized that as a tier 3, because it's not something we are obligated to at this point. It is, we've been doing a lot of research and working with the Army Corps and determined that the best route forward would be for the Park District to move forward with the repair for the path. If the Ravine 10 project move forward, if the board chose to move forward with that project, there is the opportunity for a portion of this to be covered as part of that project. But the exact amount and whether or not that can happen is still up in the air. So we would be doing this on our own, if that answers your question.
Okay, and then grammar police, there's an extra E in nourishment, and you can move it to the improvements in Rosewood Park.
Wow.
You know, it's that lack of spell check in Excel that kills me every time.
I know, true.
And getting to a more substantive point,
That was very substantive.
from my,
I would like it.
It was, thank you.
but he went ahead, that's the problem.
Sorry.
Yes, my perspective is I want to defer Moraine Park path repair. If maybe we would do it in 2021, but I don't think that we can approve that kind of expenditure under these conditions that we're prevailing now.
So is it proper for us, are you asking us to discuss this now, or do you want to?
Yeah,
Yes,
Oh.
basically, we would, what would stay in column E would be the 22-4, which has been expended, and we would probably consider putting some work in 21. We'd have to look at schedules, and that would be, in 21, what we'd be doing would be the planning, further planning, and then it would likely be that we would budget the construction in 22 then.
Terry, do you have any thoughts with regards to
I do. I'm usually a very big cheapskate, but I think it's huge that we open that up as soon as possible. I think other than Rosewood, I hear more about Moraine from constituents than anything else. Well, I guess Park Avenue, but I think it's a dangerous situation with people still using it, even though it's dangerous. So in my mind, I could see us spending it if we have the money. I don't feel like we have to defer it in my mind.
We have money but uncertainty, and it's, contrary to what you're hearing, it's like, hey, I still go down there. Yes, I can get down there. We have a beach that is, going to continue to evaporate as the water keeps going up. We don't know what's going to be the future of that dog beach. A sliver of sand isn't worth $500,000.
Here's my suggestion. I think that, I actually, I kind of agree with both of you. It's kind of like I'm Switzerland on this one. So my suggestion is that we'll when we take this back to the board, we'll just advise the board that there was not a consensus at the finance committee with regard to this issue, and we'll just open it up for the board's discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to Rosewood Beach. And yeah,
Yeah, we have a typo that we have to correct, of course.
Yes.
Oh, Barney, how'd you catch that?
all right, moving along. Line 20, revetment. So this you'll see, this is the addition. Why did the recommendation since the last meeting go up $800,000? And it is from here, from the Rosewood Beach revetment. This $800,000 was budgeted in the budget. At that last meeting, we had moved it all to 2021. We're showing it here because we are still working with Smith Group on these construction documents. But as of today, it looks like there is a possibility that they will be done with that work and permitting would be able to move quick enough because the Army Corps and the state are fast tracking a lot of this type of work, that there's a possibility that we would have the option, if we so chose, to move forward with the revetment this fall. And that would be, we're looking at revetments in the swimming cove and in the interpretive cove. Now, obviously that doesn't mean we have to move forward with it. Another major factor is how things are faring down there. I have been working closely with Smith Group. I have a call with them later today to get some more information. So it is kind of something in development, but we felt that it was important to show it in 2020 since there is a possibility the board may choose to do that this year.
Questions, comments?
This work would be done before the storm season hits in the fall?
Well, that's the hope. That would be September, October. That's the other thing we're working with them on some timelines and schedules right
And
well.
remind me, the risk if we don't do the work.
So this is in the interpretive code. It is adding additional revetment in front of the building. So it would be a stone revetment. And then it's also adding basically a sheet pile, metal sheet pile in front of the parking lot that does not currently exist. So you're providing additional protection to the building area, and then you're providing protection to the parking lot. The parking lot does not exist. One factor though is continuing to monitor how things are going. I was down there this morning, actually looking very good, particularly in the swimming cove. The work that was done there is holding up very, very well. And I will add, down at the recreation cove as well, it's looking very good. So the swimming cove, I think, is something that if the board possibly chose just to do the revetment and interpretive cove, maybe the swimming cove could be done at a later date. Maybe it doesn't need to be done. That's something we're going to continue to look to Smith Group to discuss as well in the next month or so.
And when we say the parking lot, this includes protection of the bridge structure that's down there, I assume.
Well, the revetment would not go into the ravine, so it would be that length of the parking lot.
Well, and what I will say is we are trying to obviously time these together because we don't want to make a recommendation regarding the revetment by the parking lot until we know what's going on with the bridge. So they're working on the bridge engineering assessment right now in hopes that we have all this information together so that we can make an educated decision or give you, the board, the accurate information to make those decisions for the fall, if necessary.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That's the other factor I failed to mention. That is part of this, is we want to understand that so we can understand if that's something that would need to be done together.
Any other questions, comments? Again, I think this is something that we'll bring to the board and have the board talk. I don't think we're in a position right now to recommend or not recommend that work be done. I think we need some more information. I understand why it's put there as a placeholder at this point, but to be reviewed in the future date. And my only question would be is, I think we could probably, you don't have to answer today, but just prepare this, be prepared for the question at the board level is when's the go or no go date? When do we have to make decisions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next item.
All right. Now I'm going to move down to Sunset Woods Park. The first item in Sunset Woods Park, the playground replacement, you'll note here that we have categorized this as a tier 2. We are going to touch on this, but I'd like to finish up this spreadsheet and then we're going to come back to it. So the other item at Sunset Woods Park that I'd like to point out is the ADA tennis access. You'll see in column C that this was in the original budget. We had discussed deferring it. However, we are moving that back in as an ADA project.
Questions, comments?
Just very quickly, what has to be done? Just a wider opening or what?
It's concrete work, curb work to provide ADA access to the tennis courts there. There is currently not ADA access.
Okay.
With regard to Centennial, is that the renovation of Centennial? Is that what tier is that?
That's the tier 3.
Okay.
Or yeah. So it's on the other spreadsheet. So that's what we're not seeing right now.
Okay.
We've categorized that. I apologize, Brian. Sorry, as a tier 4 as an improvement to an existing asset.
Okay. Next.
Oh, I have a question. What's the flooring that we're replacing?
In where are we at?
Centennial,
Centennial?
line
Yeah.
27.
This is the flooring, right, that we determined that we had to replace after replacing the compressor. The staff determined, and I don't know if Amalia could speak to this or Chris.
I can.
Okay.
So what that placeholder is that when the flooring is redone in the lobby area or with the renovation, there will be matching flooring from an aesthetic standpoint needed on the arena side. Otherwise, it's going to be a hodgepodge of two separate floors. So that placeholder was put in there to replace the floor on the arena side to match the lobby side that will be done during the renovation.
So that's not a tier 2 item, it's a tier.
The reason it had been, the reason we've assigned it at this time a tier 2 item is, so Chris is correct that that's the reason it was in there, but as part of the compressor replacement, we've had to replace some flooring in that area. And so we've got a small section of flooring that we're having to replace immediately, and we would like to be consistent and replace the rest of the flooring in that rink area next year, and that's what those dollars are.
It could be considered tier 3.
Very much, yeah.
So if we know we're going to be doing a major remodeling, here's my problem. I don't spend $75,000 to make something look good. I put up a sign saying, "Wait, pardon our dusk, watch what happens next year."
Okay. And that's 2021, so we can easily remove that and readdress it as we talk about the 2021
All right,
budget.
yes. I'm trying to focus on E, but it's hard when things catch your eye like that. Okay.
No, thank you. These next 3 facilities, there wasn't anything in particular I was going to point out unless there's any questions.
Questions?
Yes, and Hidden Creek, we have 15, 25, $40,000 for basically resurfacing of facilities that we're not using this year.
So there are, I'm sorry, which line are
He's
you?
adding up.
So 42,
the 3 lines.
39.
37, 39, 42.
So there were a number of slides that it needed to be, for safety reasons, it needed to be resurfaced. While the facility wasn't open this year, it was clear to us that the next time they would be used, they would still need to be resurfaced. And we also know that there would have been more, so that's the reason those were resurfaced. There are 2 other slides that were deferred, but we'll be doing them next year because with the wear and tear just from the weather over the next year, we know those are going to be necessary.
Then why don't we do them all at one time and not have the winter conditions affecting what we did this year if we're going to do the others? Let's do them all at once next year.
Mitch?
Mitch, would you like to speak to that?
I can jump in and address what, so the timing of this, we had not made any recommendation to the board and like we did in mid-May. And we knew that we couldn't open those slides this season without repairing them. And we have to basically be on the contractor's schedule. So we were addressing these really in April with the unknown if we'd open or not, knowing that we would have to address them anyway at some point. But if for some reason we were able to open this year, those 2 particular slides, we couldn't have operated because they were in disrepair. So we deferred the ones that we knew didn't have to be addressed this year to next year. And the slide structure repair, that is something that we could defer to 2021, the 15,000. That's some structural repair that could get addressed in the spring of 2021 instead of the fall, if we so choose to do so.
Yeah, wherever we can avoid spending the money for a repair that we're not going to implement until May or June of next year, I would say just defer it until defer all the resurfacing and the repairs until next year. Then we get a bigger bang for the buck.
Yeah, so the children's slide that you see in 37 and the speed slide in 39, those have been done because we had to do those in order to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we already did them?
Yeah, we did those two. The slide structure repair, that 15,000 could get deferred to 2021 and we can address it in the spring along with these other
Okay,
projects.
okay, got it.
Terry, have anything, Terry?
I'm all good.
Okay. Anything else, Barney?
No.
Okay, let's move on.
And here's our final three facilities.
What are you doing at Sunset Valley with the bridges?
So this is part of a safety replacement. It's been identified through our inspections that we would need to replace a series of bridges over the next 5 years. And so it is in the working draft as a replacement based on safety.
Does any
Based
of,
on-
does any of the 280 qualify for ADA?
That's a good question that we will explore.
That was going to be my question too. I was just going to ask what, if anything, having to do with cart paths or anything like that has to do with ADA at the golf course.
Yeah, all of, so there's, you don't see the percentage in these projects, but a percent of these projects are identified through ADA. So when, in that previous slide, when we showed how much was coming out of ADA and how much was coming out of the bond cash, we just don't go to this much detail, but we have it if you want to see it.
Yeah, and I can say, for example, community park development, a portion of that's considered ADA. There's a number of paths that we are replacing to make them ADA compliant to certain elements, and certain elements that we're doing there to be ADA. And there are a few others. And we would also see in the tier 3, 4, and 5, any larger facility renovation has a portion of those dollars that will come from the ADA fund.
Is Community Park near the preserve?
You know what? Thank you. Terry, you're killing me today. You're killing me.
Jeff may have just struck out.
Oh, my God.
Jerry
I'm
tells
glad
the
you're here
jokes
today,
and
Terry.
Dean
Thanks.
gets the girls. Let's go.
All right.
All right, next, what's the next slide?
Yeah, so,
You take it.
sunset, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we just want to take, and we'll do this real quickly. I know it's in your board packet, so hopefully you had a chance to look at it, but, of course, originally this year, we planned on beginning the planning process for the scheduled replacement of the playground at Sunset Woods Park. And then we appropriately, we left it in the budget, but we have delayed it because obviously, our parks have been closed, and we've been very cautious with how we've been spending money. So the purpose of today is I wanted to bring it to the Finance Committee one last time before we bring to the Park Board, and really for just 3 reasons that I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about. The first being that we provided some pictures because I'm not sure all the board members have been out there, and the truth of the matter is it is in critically bad shape. It is already a safety concern. We have removed many pieces from the park, which we'll explain real briefly here. But it is in critically bad shape. And secondly, it was originally, and as we did the refresh for Greenprint, identified as a board-approved priority. And obviously, much of that is due to our attitude and interest survey, in which the community had communicated that would be a project that they would be interested in seeing. And clearly, this is a mission critical area. So in doing our due diligence, we just want to present real quickly here kind of the before and after of where we're at with Sunset, just to give you that information you need to make a good recommendation and approval to staff. So I'm going to let Amalia just,
Brian, before we talk about Sunset Woods, are we going to go over the tier 3, 4, and 5 projects, or are we doing that a different day?
So we were going to do that a different day, but it's up to you. We can do it today. We are prepared.
No, let's do it a different day. We've digested a lot of stuff. I think it's best to separate that so we can talk about that in a different meeting. And
I agree.
I'm fine with that. The only other thing I would mention, and I'm just for your consideration, is that, you know, with everything happening with the pandemic, I mean, somewhere along the line, there may be you know, when you talk about these tier 3, 4, and 5 projects, there may be an infrastructure bill coming out of Washington or even Springfield that may provide some opportunities for the Park District. So when you look at those tier 3, 4, and 5 projects, see if when you think about it, you know, talk to our legislative consultants or what may qualify for stimulus money. For example, Rose, one of the reasons Rosewood was able to get done is that was money left over from the stimulus from the last Great Recession. So
Yeah.
it's something that when you think about those projects, and you know, there may be alternative funding mechanisms out there to help pay for those projects. So just
Yeah,
again,
absolutely. And what I'll say is our staff is extremely connected to all of IAPD and our legislators and in the know of that exact same thing. So, and usually the most important thing to remember with those is they always need to be shovel ready or need to have planning documents ready to go, which is why for a lot of these, we're suggesting we move forward with planning documents so that when those grant money become available, we are eligible for them. Because that's always a stipulation, is that you can't just say, oh, look, here's money, let's plan something. You have to have it in your capital plan and have those plans ready to go. So, but yes, great point, Cal, and we are definitely on top of that. Thank you.
okay, now let's move on to Sunset Woods. Unless anybody else have any questions or comments. Barney, Terry?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, I'll let Amalia, and I think she's going to run through this pretty quickly, but
Okay.
just want to make sure you guys see these. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Amalia.
Yeah, I looked
All
at I looked at the pictures. The place is dilapidated. It's falling apart. We're torn out a lot of things. And we really, 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 really have to replace it.
Okay, we could skip it if you like. If you saw the pictures already and you don't want to see them again, that's fine. We just thought we would make sure that you had the opportunity to. So Terry, Cal, if you guys want to see them, great. Barney, sounds like you are comfortable. Let me know.
Yeah, I looked at the pictures. I looked at the packet. Terry, let's see you want to run through this.
No,
All right,
So what's Amalia, what's your conclusion? Tell us what the conclusion is.
the conclusion, I think Brian touched on it. If there's funding available, starting with the planning now would help us be in a good place if funding were to become available for this project.
And let me add to that too. Yes, if funding were to become available, it put us in a good place. But the reality is, if we want this playground to be replaced next year, we have to do the planning now. If we want it to be eligible for grant funding that may come available, we should start the planning now. What I mean by now is basically this year in September is what we're proposing. So now, if we don't do the planning this year, that playground, as you see it in those pictures, will be that way or worse next year. And it's just, we may have to close it down. It's in critically bad shape.
We appreciate that. Didn't we talk about going to the designer and getting a proposal and knowing if we can stop and start it?
Yes. So we have, Jeff and Amalia did the first step and they got the information. And what we know is to get everything started, which would be the first few phases of community engagement and conceptual design, it would be about $30,000, and that would do necessary studies on the soil, as well as engagement with the community and get us to a schematic design. That would that's the first like $35,000. So that's the portion that we would look at recommending when we get to that point over the next few weeks here and go to the board, that we'd recommend moving forward with this year. And then construction documents will be an additional fee, which is typically a percent of the cost of the entire project. So that percent we're still negotiating, but I think we anticipate, we're talking about another $100,000 if we're going to have a project that is close to $1 million. And based on the square footage available, and we can get into this at another meeting, but based on the square footage available at that space, I think staff feels $1 million is even probably not enough money. It's enough to replace the pieces and put in new work, but it's not going to get us something that would be unique or special, or, for the next 20 years, be something that would be sort of this trademark park playground at the Park District. But again, that component, we have much more time to discuss and understand.
Well, actually, let me ask you, Amalia, this question on that. This has been a signature park, and we, at some point, were award-winning and, known for that park.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have to tell the designer we want a signature park?
Yes, and I think that we've mentioned that in RFQ. That's how we wrote our RFQ. We see that playground as it's centrally located. Many people use it, so it should be a signature park. But how that park looks, and I think what Brian was getting at, what we touch on, is something that we think will come out of our community engagement efforts. So we didn't, I guess, I don't, is that answering your question?
No, because we
Okay.
have to make a decision, I think, and tell the community this is, the community is not going to pick out the play equipment. The community's not going to lay it out. They'll be good to give input
Yes.
with the presented project. But I'm saying we need to, and you touched on it, when we go to the designer, we have to tell them, we want a signature product. We've seen signature projects other places. We had one 40 years ago.
Mhm.
And, you said $1 million might not be enough. I think we understand that.
Yeah, and I think that that's why we want to start working with the designer, because we can work with them on what opportunities we have. They'll start looking at our site, and we will work with the community and with the designer to see what options we have. And that's where they'll come out with 2 schematic plans for our community to react to, so that we can give them more direction so that they can move on to the next step of planning. So really, we just have to jump in to start working with them so that we can understand what we can do in our project boundary.
Similar to the design of the preserve, we had much internal input with the designers before it went to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through more than 2 iterations of many things. So are we being ham-tied by this group because they're expensive and they'll give us 2 renderings, or does that include a preliminary and then we work with them on 12 different iterations until we get a second one?
That's a good question, and I think that that's where we have to continue our negotiations with the firm. But I guess when I say 2 schematic plans, that's really what we would like to present, the final products, the deliverables that we expect to present to the board and to the community. But again, the negotiations will really talk about what is happening internally, and how do we get the process that we need to take to get to those 2 final schematic plans that are being presented to the community for feedback.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
At our foundation meetings, we've often been searching for a central core project to try to get the community behind. I'm not saying we have the power right now to raise $500,000, but this seems to be a very natural, organic sort of project that we can try partnering with the foundation in order to maybe help out. If it's going to be $1.5 million to bring this wow park to the center of our town, maybe the foundation can help in some way.
And we should look for private sponsors.
If I may, also, I'll just suggest this again. I think we suggested it before, and if not, that's completely okay. But staff certainly would would love to work with maybe a few board liaisons on this to sort of contribute towards a recommendation to the board, or we can keep bringing it to the finance committee. I just know it's kind of its own little project that might be helpful to have a few board liaisons with.
Yeah, well, we'll do that, but I think right now, the question is, should we move forward with the planning? And given my feelings about the park, and I know we've resisted because of the Corona situation, and we were trying to be very sensitive to money issues, I think the planning should be done.
Terry?
Yeah. No, I was asking you because we just talked about this.
Yeah, my thinking on this is that really I was not against doing the planning, but I wanted to do in context with knowing what funds we had available, and we've answered a lot of those questions today. And I really appreciate the thought and the effort that went into creating these tier buckets, because I found this is very helpful. This is what I was looking for, trying to create some I guess order to the projects that we need to move forward with, that we have to, that we want to, and that we wish to. So I think that the staff has done an amazing job of organizing this, so it's easy for us to understand with regard to how we can prioritize. I've now, knowing what we have to spend and how we have to spend it, I feel more comfortable moving forward with Sunset Park. Obviously, it isn't what you were to call it a signature or a trophy or whatever it is, but it's all of the above for the community. And I think that it's something that has to get done at the right time. And I think probably knowing that we have the ability to invest in the planning without being detrimental to any other need of the district, then I feel more comfortable moving forward. I didn't feel comfortable that a month ago because we didn't have this information. So I appreciate staff assembling all this, so it's easier for us to understand. It'll be easier for the board to understand also.
Okay, and just to put a cherry on top of that, just seeing the activity there when we did finally open up. I mean, the whole world has changed back to the 1960s and 70s, and we're seeing kids riding bikes and people going to parks and people rollerblade. I'm waiting to see the kid rolling the wheel down with a stick down the street. It's just like everything's kind of throwback, and it just shows how important parks have been to societies for hundreds of years. And this is our baby, so I'm all in.
Okay, thank you. That's it for capital projects then.
Okay, so is there any other business? I know we have the segregation of duties and audit findings. We're going to put that aside for a second. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss with us?
No.
Is it board members? Do you have anything else, Barney, Terry?
No, sir.
No.
My suggestion, I'm trying to keep these meetings to an hour and a half because I am at the office right now. I'd like to table the segregation of the duties and audit findings. Is it okay with my other commissioners? Because again, I don't want I'm at work right now and I got a lot of things going on. So unless anybody else, we could take it up at the next meeting unless someone else really wants to hear.
Let me take 1 minute about it. This is on the agenda because it was brought up as a suggestion by the auditors. But I think the answer is they were comfortable if we showed the internal controls without making a change other than internal control.
Yeah, but I just want to see like a 5-minute presentation on it, what we're doing, so we have a little more information. I just don't have the time right now to deal with it.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, can we table that to the next meeting? Is there
No problem.
consensus?
Sure.
No problem.
Okay, all right.
When is the proposed next meeting?
That's what I have under other business. So I am proposing our next meeting be on July 16th at 10 a.m. How does that look?
Hold on. Oh, is that 2 weeks? That's 2 weeks from today?
Yeah.
Is Thursday, is that like a special, like, great day for everybody?
So that particular week is also board meeting week. So we definitely wanted to stay away from Tuesday. And then next week, there's a lot of conflicts. So 15th or 13th or 17th
Wednesday's
done.
not good?
I think it's fine for us.
Sure,
I don't know. Barney and Cal.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm fine either day.
Can we start earlier?
Nine,
That's
nine,
great.
So just so you know, that would be the morning after the board meeting. Is that okay? If that goes late and then this is early?
It won't go late.
Okay.
Our president promised it won't go late, so I think we're okay.
It's on
Okay.
Zoom or whatever.
All right, we'll send it out to confirm, and then we'll get everything in motion. Great, thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other business from board, from staff, anything from staff?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, is
Thank you.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. The meeting is, we have adjourned at 11:37. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Okay,
great 4th of
Thanks,
July.
Cal.
Well,
Bye.
thanks, Barney, thanks, Terry, appreciate
Bye.
it. Have a great day, have a great 4th.
Thank you, everyone.
As
Thank
a
you.
reminder, our holiday is tomorrow, July 3rd.
Okay, have a great 4th
Have
of
a
July
great,
week.
great weekend, everybody.
Stay safe.
Good.
Bye.
I can't get out of this. How do we get out?
Just when you're in, they won't let you back. They pull you
Yeah,
back.
I mean, is this the Hotel California?
No, it's Godfather 3. Bye.
There we go.